Hello, fellow Equatorians. This is Sabata with the Equatoria Advocacy Foundation. I would like to point out some missteps that Equatorians have uh, taken in the past that has contributed to the current demise of Equatorians, because it's very important to know these missteps. And one of the importance of knowing these missteps is that as Equatorians try to move forward, they should know some of the mistakes that they have done in the past, so that they plan moving forward accordingly, so they don't repeat some of the mistakes that they have done in the past. I would like to begin by talking about the controversial election of Abel Alier as the president of the High Executive Council in 1980, and this is the time when Abel Alier came up to be the president of the High Executive Council of the Southern Region in 1980. And so what had happened at the time was that there were two candidates. Okay, Abel Alier was one, and there was an Equatorian. And in the assembly at the time, I'm talking about the regional autonomy, the government of the regional autonomy. It was divided such that there was the High Executive Council, and then there was the assembly. Okay, it was called the People's Assembly, or the People's Regional Assembly. Okay, so it was a parliamentarian system. People competed for seats in the parliament, and from there you first of all take a seat in the parliament, and then from there you get then you compete for a position, whether it's a ministerial position or the undersecretariat's seats. There was an Equatorian who was running, okay, with Abel Alier, competing for the presidency of the High Executive Council. And what has happened at the time was that some Equatorians within the parliament had prepared most of the Equatorians, and the Equatorians were pretty much dominant at the time at the assembly. Actually, they called it assembly at the time. And in the assembly, Equatorians were dominant, and Equatorians planned to get the Equatorian to be the president of the High Executive Council. But then 3 days before the election date, the Equatorian withdrew away his candidacy. And by default, Abel Alier was the only candidate at the time, so he ended up becoming the president of the High Executive Council. And when that happened, many things happened under his leadership. Pretty much most of what is happening currently in Equatoria, Equatorians were experiencing the following. In the what is called equatorial provinces, that is the Western Equatoria and the Eastern Equatoria provinces. At that time, Central Equatoria was not available. The provinces were governed under provincial commissioners. The provincial commissioner for the Eastern Equatoria province was, I think it was Venancio Loro at the time. the Dinka Bor from Jungule would bring cattle to the eastern province of the Equatoria. And the commissioner of the Eastern Equatoria province at the time would have a very hard time to regulate the movement and the behaviors of the people from Dinka Bor at the time, because every attempt of improving security that the commissioner would attempt to bring, the leadership of the High Executive Council would intervene or would connive on the crimes that people from Dinka Bor are committing, especially the cattle herders. They had a problem that the Equatorians faced was this, that the Dinka Bor people were brought from their cattle kraals from Jungule, and of course they were brought to Juba because Juba was the capital at the time. The officers were in Juba. Wazarat was in Juba. They would be brought to Juba and they would be recruited police without proper training or without training. And some of them are recruited to higher positions, higher ranking positions in the police. And as a result of that, they also played with acts of crime, especially fights that were unnecessarily raised by the Dinka Bor cattle herders. All right. Most of the current activities that the Dinka Bor cattle herders are doing right now under this current government that Kir is overseeing, the transitional government of this national unity, the revitalized one. The same type of crimes that the transitional government of national unity seems to be kind of ignoring. Same type of crimes that are happening in the equatorial areas happened during those days. For that reason, Lagu and the politicians who surrounded Lagu at the time felt that something needed to be done for a solution. Lagu then wrote a document to President of Sudan at the time, Nimeri. And the document is called Decentralization, Necessity for the Southern Provinces. In that document, Lagu narrated some of the problems that the regional autonomy has been facing, and he proposed regionalization of the southern region. And it is important for me to also note that in 1980, Nimeri issued a decree which he divided the northern, he restructured the northern political demographics into what is called regional governments. He created the Darfur region, the Kordofan region, the central region, the northern region, the western region, and the eastern region. So basically what Lagu was proposing, and by the way, Nimeri did not do anything for the southern region. The southern region remained as just one south region with 6 provinces. We initially had 3 provinces, then each province was divided into 2. So we had one southern region with 6 provinces in 1980. So what Lagu was basically proposing to Nimeri was that, Nimeri, go ahead and divide the South into regional governments the same way you divided the North. And that will solve our problems. In other words, decentralizing authorities into regional governments. We can no longer run South as one region. It has to be divided because we were just not getting along. Nimeri brought this to the attention of Lagu, that you in the South and the government of Sorat Mayo are running an Addis Ababa agreement. And I hope that this is not going to be a controversy of the Addis Ababa agreement, but Lagu and the politicians who surrounded him at the time, those with whom they have agreed, insisted that that was necessary for solutions in the southern region. Nimeri then accepted, irrespective of the fact that Abel Alier rejected. Abel Alier, who was actually the president of the High Executive Council at the time, rejected that proposal and told Nimeri it wasn't a good proposal. Nimeri then implemented the proposal that Lagu had proposed, and he divided the South into the three regions: the Equatorial region, the Upper Nile region, and the Bahar al-Ghazal region. And it is this that was called the Kokora. That is very important to mention. And if it is not for the sake of time, I would have played the decree that was issued just to make things clear. Not quite sure if I will be able to pull this up, but for the sake of time, let me allow that to pass. I'm sure many Equatorians, you have seen the declaration of Kokora in Facebook and all that, when Nimeri issued the decree and said he's dividing the southern region into three, in which Equatoria would have their capital in Juba, Upper Nile would have their capital in Malakal, and Bahar al-Ghazal will have their capital in Wau. And when that division happened, and of course based on what Lagu was proposing, he was saying that will eventually bring some solutions. And Nimeri, by the way, clarified that that division is simply a trial, and it is intended to be implemented for 8 to 10 months. Go ahead and look at the declaration and you will see what I'm saying. They said that was intended to be implemented for 8 to 10 months. If the South Sudanese liked it, they will maintain it. If the South Sudanese do not like the experience of it, then they would just throw it out. That is factual. It was implemented in 1983. That government only lasted for 6 months. And then the second civil war broke out of the SPLM. And when the second civil war of the SPLM broke out, John Garang alleged the following as reasons for the inception of the SPLM. One, that the Southerners have been marginalized. Second, that there was a jihad, and that the government of the North tried to impose Sharia over the people, or tried to create what is called an Islamic state by the imposition of the Sharia al-Islamiyah to the exclusion of those who are not Muslims. All right. And the third main reasons. I'm counting about the main reasons: the marginalization, the jihad, and the third reason was that the northerners were taking lands, basically, of the southerners. All right. So these were actually the main reasons, and that's why when you listen to most of the Lost Boys talking sometimes in social media, they tend to think that independence of the South, it means securing of the lands of the Southerners. All right, they don't. A lot of people don't see that as what is called more of an administrative kind of jurisdictions. To what degree the North will have power over the South, or people don't see it that way. It's more to do with tangible lands and all these kind of things, which is fallacious. It's not true. So the questions then that will basically be asked then is, well, how did the Southerners get marginalized when they basically had government of the regional autonomy in which they were in control of their matters in the South? At what point did the jihad arise when the inception of the SPLM broke out in 1983, just 6 months after the Kokora? All right, at what time? The Southerners, I was there myself. We have been going to churches. So I've attended schools in Arabic. There were some missionaries who are running schools in I've attended school in English. There are so many missionaries who have attended schools, who have basically ran schools in English. Comboni was there, St. Joseph was there, Juba Model, and so many schools. So at what point were the Southerners getting marginalized, and at what point was there any slavery? We did not even realize that the Northerners have really been exercising jihad, where we were forced to accept Islam. We have never experienced all these kind of things at the inception of the SPLM. So it is clear that the SPLM inception was simply because of these administrative divisions. All right, these administrative divisions actually sparked the whole of this eruption of the SPLM. Now, a huge mistake that the Equatorians, and I want to fairly ask Equatorians this question, that if you've noticed that Lagu proposed the regionalization of the South to solve problems that you are facing from the Dinkabor cattle herders. And Nimeri implemented that. At what point then is the government of Nimeri your adversary? At what point are the Northerners your adversary? Isn't it true that it is the people from Dinkabor? And that is why Kokora was installed as a solution? That is very clear. The problem was not the North. The problem was Dinka Boer cattle keepers. And not only just that, I would give them a slack, because they are very uneducated people. They don't know what they are doing. That is their lifestyle. They live by herding cattle and by taking stuff by force and all this kind. But the government at the time, who were predominantly actually Dinka during Abel Alier's time. All right. How about the fact that the government was conniving around the crimes, or around the fact that the provincial governments were not able to run authority? And it is because the High Executive Council continued to push their authority over the provincial authorities. You see, just the same way today, Equatorians, when you look at the equatorial 3 states, the current 3 states, of the Central Equatoria, Eastern Equatoria, Western Equatoria, your administrations in those states are not able to operate because of the function of the central authority, the function of Kir, because it is more of a dictatorial system. It makes the peripheries, the governments of the states not be operational. Everything is decided here. You can imagine it is Kir who appointed all those governors. So let's get back to where some of the missteps that Equatorians have taken. How did then Equatorians end up supporting SPLM, calling out that the Northerners were the problem at an event when actually Nimeri saved you from the Dinka-Bor Kato rustlers by dividing administration of the South into three? So Equatorians, when you think about that, you will come to realize that Equatorians who have supported the SPLM movement from its inception went wrong. Equatorians who have supported the SPLM movement from its inception went wrong. Because the inception of this SPLM movement were actually based on lies. And I have indicated to you earlier, they talked of marginalization when we had the South, all right? They talk of jihad when we were not even seeing jihad. They are talking about lands being confiscated, which was not even true. We were all occupying our lands in the South. So they were actually based on fallacious reasons. But then the Equatorians made a misstep. They went ahead and supported the SPLM other than, or instead of actually standing with the government of Sorat Mayo at the time. Because people lived better. Equatorians, you lived better when you were under the government of Sorat Mayo, because you were given a form of autonomy. You decided on your political matters. You could have exercised whatever you wanted. Now look, you have supported SPLM and see what is happening today. The other misstep that Equatorians have stepped on is in I think it was around 1991, 92, 93 there, when Alfred Ladu Gore tried to bring awareness amongst the Equatorians that this SPLM will take Equatorians nowhere. So it is best to form something of the Equatorians in which then later on, if South Sudan was to be obtained, then Equatorians would basically be negotiating with the SPLM cadres for how to run the government with at least equal standing. But fellow Equatorians, if you have noticed, that call from Alfred Ladu Gore was even ignored. I was in Kampala at the time, and I've seen how actively Alfred Ladu Gore and those of the late Ludovic Ladu tried their best. All right. I know that Professor Wanji and also Luka Monoja had their reservations with the SPLM, but I do remember very well that they were getting along with those of Alfred Ladu Gore, but they were also calling for independence of the Equatoria at the time. All right, they were calling for independence of the Equatoria, those of Professor Wanji and those of Luka Monoja. This is something else different. But the point is the fact that the Equatoria people did not rally behind the call from Alfred Ladu Gore, because he even did some initiatives to start a movement. All right, but the movement did not get any support because Equatorians you simply ignored. All right, and we came to a time when SPLM was almost collapsing. You see, Equatorians, remember this, SPLM at a point almost collapsed. And it was true that your people went and campaigned so hard. And I remember you people have also went all the way to Kakuma, campaigning, bringing people into SPLM, kind of giving life again to SPLM, all right? At a time when SPLM was basically withering away. So now you can see persistently, it looked like Equatorians, you have always nurtured the very instrument that eventually comes to destroy you. You see, from the inception of the SPLM, you went ahead and supported it. You ignored the call or the warnings from Alfred Ladugore. Even though he tried to do something on the side, you refused it. You rejuvenated SPLM back to life at a time when it was actually going down after Dr. Riek left around 1990, 1991. And see where you are today. You can't even help yourself from the type or form of governance that this cadres of SPLM has imposed onto you people in the Republic of South Sudan. So I am mentioning some of these missteps. These are very important missteps, by the way, fellow Equatorians. These are important missteps that you should learn from. It should not demoralize you, but it should re-energize you. It should reorient you so that you realize that in fact you have not been making good decisions for yourself. To make you focus, to make you start listening to each other, how way forward should look like. Fellow Equatorians, I hope this message has not confused much. I hope I will come to engage with you again some other time to give more information. And please subscribe to this channel of the Equatorial Advocacy Foundation so that we will eventually put ourselves and listen to ourselves and see how we can move on in order to serve ourselves. Thank you very much. God bless you.